Izzy in the Moonlit Garden. Chapter 4. The Library. The specter of winter came to Bridlewood. Gone were the days of autumn past, the fallen leaves covered under a blanket of snow. There was little warmth to be found for the unicorns of Bridlewood, save for their various hearths, and there were little shared between them, as always. As the snow piled higher and higher outside of her cottage, Izzy Moonbow's visits to the hidden garden had grown scarcer, like it had in other winters, for the cold winds reached deep into Bridlewood. However now, with a crushing emptiness as her burden to carry, Izzy found little motivation to bother Luna. So her winter days, once filled with quiet time spent tinkering with her latest contraptions in parallel to her mother's ever-endless hours of painting, were now filled with little else outside of food and long winding hours of looking out the window. Either that or ruminating before the letter she received so long ago, whose sender remained as unknown to her as the lands beyond Bridlewood.
Dear unicorns and Pegasi.
She remembered the words all too keenly. But Pegasi were mean and cruel, she was told, just as unicorns were drab and somber, and earth ponies were rough and dim. Whoever wrote the letter must have been just as hopeless as she, as he thought.
Why bother?
She told herself. No one would ever brew her finest cocoa and tea for just the two of them ever again, even as Izzy savored every warm sip. Nothing much left to do, save for waiting for the hours to go by, over and over, in this empty house. It came as a surprise to her, of course, when on the second day of winter there was a knock at the door, and who else should stand there but Alphabeetle and a few others, including the gloomy poet from his tea room.
What's this?
Izzy asked. Beside the stallion was a sizable stack of wood. Firewood? Duh, Alphabeetle replied with a roll of his eyes. Can't keep a hearth going without fuel, can you?
Did I lose a bet?
No, Alphabeetle said simply. Take it or leave it, it's gonna be a long one. Izzy smiled and received none in return, but the poet took off her hat and Alphabeetle gave one of his curt nods. That was all they had to exchange, but Izzy felt it. It was like a ray of warmth in the days of winter gone by. Part of her wondered in between warm drinks of pine tea before bed where Luna had gone. The mare had always turned down her offer of food whenever she'd offered it. She had her own food, Luna had insisted, and so Izzy let the matter pass. But now, as winter's grip grew even tighter around Bridlewood, Izzy had to wonder if Luna had any food at all. On the longest night of the year, before she could depart in the morning with whatever food she could spare, Izzy beheld a library. A library was the best she could call it. A glance into its window showed a great many books. Most were legible, yet some of them were in languages or letters that she couldn't understand. A staircase led to a loft above, where a bed covered in a sun and moon motif lay untouched. A home. The sound of hooves on stone drew her attention, and she tore her gaze away, towards the village that surrounded her. The moon was at its highest point, its silver light illuminating thatched roofs and cobbled roads, houses whose designs Izzy had glimpsed only in storybooks. Twinkling stars filled the cloudless nighttime sky, finishing the idyllic landscape. All around her Izzy saw little sign of life, as one by one the lights in each window went out, till only the libraries remained. Then as she looked out into the town, Izzy saw them. Down the cobblestone path walked two ponies side by side. One was a purple unicorn mare who couldn't have been much older than her. She was dressed in a star-patterned cape and pointed hat, adorned with bells that jingled as she walked. Across her back, what looked to be an oversized purple and green lizard lay fast asleep. And right by her Izzy saw Luna. But she couldn't have been Luna, for this mare's starry blue mane flowed even in the absence of wind. Her coat was a shade darker than Luna's, her hooves covered in silver shoes. Even her cloak was well maintained, much unlike her friend's patchwork cloak. But there was no mistaking those same elegant eyes, the serene gait, and most of all that mellifluous voice, as they passed by Izzy without giving her a second glance.
I hope I'm not taking away your time, Princess Luna,
said the purple mare.
I mean, gosh, it's almost past midnight. Don't you have work tonight? Sure, it's every night and all, but still. Nay, fear not,
said Luna.
For I certainly find these hours well spent. Thou hast been good company, Twilight Sparkle, and then little Drake too. 'Tis only fair that I escort thee home.
The purple mare, Lavender really, let out a soft laugh, almost a giggle.
What? What is it?
Luna asked as they arrived at the door to the library.
Oh, nothing. The girls won't ever let me hear the end of it,
said Twilight. Luna arched an eyebrow and Twilight offered a sheepish little smile.
It's just that, do I amuse thee, Twilight? Yeah, you do, and... oh.
Twilight trailed off upon seeing Luna's growing frown.
No, I'm not laughing at you, Princess. It's just that no one's ever walked me home before.
She tipped her hat, the bells jingling.
Thank you, Princess, for the time. Nightmare Night was a lot of fun.
Luna gave a bow in return.
It is I who ought to thank thee, for thou hast aided us greatly. Now do rest well, Twilight Sparkle, for it has been a long night for us all. Well, it is a lovely night for sure,
Twilight said, looking up at the moon above. For a moment, Izzy caught sight of darkening freckles upon Luna's cheeks.
I think I'll stay up a bit later than usual. I still have a letter to write. A letter? Mm-hmm. Something about today. Princess Celestia has asked me to send them daily, keep her updated on what I've been up to. Friendship reports. I see,
Luna replied, sounding a little unsure.
I certainly hope tonight has been fun indeed. Oh, don't worry, Princess,
said Twilight.
You did great. Don't you forget it. I shall not.
Luna answered. She paused.
May we see these friendship reports? You're gonna have to ask your sister for them,
Twilight said with a sly smile.
But we could always write to each other if you'd like.
Luna's smile was tranquil yet bashful too.
That would be lovely,
she said.
Until we meet again, Twilight Sparkle. Let it be known that Canterlot shall always welcome thee.
She gave a sweeping bow, one that Twilight answered with one of her own.
I'm honored. Thanks, and good night, Princess. Good night, Twilight.
They parted. The door swung shut, yet Luna did not leave. Just as she was about to walk down the path where they had trod, she turned to peer into the window. There Twilight sat before her desk, horn lit, scribbling down a piece of parchment. Beside her lay a telescope, and ever so slightly Luna's lips curved into a smile.
Come, Izzy,
Luna said aloud, as she turned away from the window.
Let us take a walk.
Izzy's eyes widened, and she didn't let go of the windowsill.
Luna? Is it you? 'Tis I,
answered her friend.
There is much to talk about, or perhaps none at all. Come, come, tonight the moon shines bright.
Giving the darkened library one last glance, Izzy turned away and joined the tall mare down the cobblestone road. They walked on, past closed doors and shuttered windows. Though there were no other souls to be seen, it certainly felt warmer than Bridalwood. Flower pots hung from windows, children's toys lay scattered outside, and here and there Izzy saw well-maintained gardens, not unlike Luna's. The mare beside her remained quiet as their walk continued. That wasn't, of course, until Izzy broke the silence.
I like your house,
Izzy said.
It looks pretty cozy. It was,
Luna answered.
You should see our room. I'm sure you know all about it,
Izzy said before she could help herself. Before she could stammer out an apology, Luna had already let out a laugh. A fond laughter that reminded Izzy so strongly of her mother, a laughter shared with her father. When Luna's laughter died down at last, so did too her smile, her gaze turning forlorn.
Let us continue,
she said simply, and so their walk went on. Down the road past endless rows of well-kept houses was a lovely treehouse at the edge of the forest, a great red and white building amidst the trees. That was into a forest more twisted and gnarled than Bridalwood had ever been. Then across a ravine Izzy saw a castle, or what might have passed as one, for it lay in ruins, its towers collapsed. She knew little of castles, only through illustrations in her old storybooks. Luna showed no sign of stopping, and so Izzy went with her. Before an orrery between shredded tapestries and piles of rubble, Luna paused in her steps.
This was my home once,
Luna whispered.
Where my garden once flourished and where Twilight Sparkle brought me back from the darkness, through the light of harmony itself.
She traced circles in the dust beneath her, letting the winds blow away the dust that settled. A six-pointed star was etched upon the ground beneath a thin layer of dust, long forgotten, now uncovered. Luna looked away from it, meeting Izzy's eyes.
In time, it returns to its rightful glory, all because she wanted to make me happy,
Luna whispered. She let out a bitter laugh.
Who am I to deserve her kindness?
She lamented.
To have her teach me something so simple as fun. You loved her,
Izzy said, almost a whisper. Luna looked away from the floor, meeting Izzy's eyes. Her eyes glistened in the moonlight.
She was very dear to me,
she said.
As I was to her. In time, we've gained the courage to approach one another, to take the next step forward. Now we've had our time together under the moon, and I wish to cherish it, as I have cherished it for so long.
She looked up towards the moon above, and fell quiet as a stone. Izzy took a few ginger steps forward.
Luna?
She asked.
How long has it been? Far too long. I am old, Izzy Moonbow. Older than the first seeds of Bradwood.
Luna answered.
I had promised her a very long time ago that I would see her work finished, to see it preserved, that I would see her again when all was done. And yet here I waste away, watching all that she held so dear fall apart. Hey, that's not true.
Said Izzy. She furrowed her brows in thought.
Your garden. I'm sure she loved that, right? I like it. Tiberius likes it. And Mom.
Her voice faded. Her mother would have liked it, she was about to say. But how much of it was true, Izzy could not tell. Perhaps she wouldn't have, no matter how much she poured care into her painting. She would never know. It was only when Luna came by to her kneeling down did Izzy realize she was crying.
I am sorry for your loss, Izzy.
Luna said, placing a hoof upon her shoulder.
To have your parents taken away so very soon, one after the other. It is what it is,
said Izzy, caring not to spill a single tear upon the floor.
I'll be okay. You lost a lot more than I did. They don't ever say that.
Luna interjected sternly, yet not unkindly.
Your loss is as great as any. No, it's fine. It's...
But it wasn't, Izzy thought to herself. None of it had been. The empty house, lonely hours that went by. Nothing. All day.
Mom wasn't the cheerful kind,
Izzy said, and it ached her to say it.
She was quiet and sad too. But she cared. And that was nice. At least she listened. No one else would, but she did. She sounds like the world to you,
Luna concluded, and Izzy did not think to deny it.
Yeah, like my dad and I were to her. Now they're both gone, and I don't know if I should leave.
Before Luna could answer, Izzy unfurled the letter, where she had gotten it. She herself couldn't tell. What mattered was it was here. Just a simple drawing. 3 ponies joined together as friends without a care for the boundaries of either horns or wings.
It's just a letter,
Izzy remarked.
There's just not much to go on, but I guess it's good enough that someone somewhere out there wrote this and hoped it reached a friend. I don't know if I am one or if I should even bother.
She smiled, holding the letter close.
But at least someone cares, though,
Izzy said, looking at Luna. The older mare looked reassuring, smiling to match her own.
The smallest of efforts may leave the greatest impact,
Luna said solemnly.
It's the little things,
Izzy concluded, and Luna nodded.
The little things.
Gently she brushed a forehoof against the letter, trailing golden dust as she did so. Before Izzy's eyes, the 3 ponies hopped off of the page, playing alongside one another. They danced, they played, they bonded as friends do. When all was said and done, they slept against one another, quiet as they could be. Izzy looked towards Luna, her grateful words dying in her throat. For Luna stood there against the broken stained glass window. Her horn lit up with a blue glow, one that enveloped the moon above. Her cloak blew open. A pair of great wings unfolded, and all around them stardust danced and coalesced, surrounding Luna in all its majestic glory. As Luna bowed, the moon's light faded away just as the sun emerged and rose higher in the sky. The morning after was a blur, quite literally, for Izzy wasted very little time the moment she opened her eyes. Luna was all she could think of, and it was to Luna that she ought to speak. So with barely half a bowl of porridge finished, Izzy ran out the door, past all the crystals and rocks and streams through the tunnel and vines. Little Tiberius barely had a moment's worth to squeak before Izzy burst through panting. Luna was there, same as she always was. The same patchwork, ugly cloak, the pale blue coat, the freckles that dotted her muzzle and those eyes. Yet Izzy had only one thought racing in her mind.
I saw you,
she said, breathless.
You were there. You had...
However, Izzy could not finish her words. Catching sight of the nervous glance, Luna threw her way, her forehoof tugging at her cloak. However, when the gardener spoke next, she sounded rather confused.
I know not of what you speak,
said Luna, shaking her head.
Dreams can so often seem real. But I didn't say it was a dream.
Luna opened her mouth to reply, but no answer came. Izzy felt her lips curl into a smile.
Your mare friend,
she asked, and Luna's ears flicked.
Did she ever get to write a friendship report to you?
The freckles on Luna's cheeks darkened, but there was no haughty frown to be met, only a downcast look.
Of course she did. So many letters, so very many of them.
She said.
And each of them is as precious to me as the other.
She turned away from Izzy, moving towards a little nook. And as Izzy wondered if she'd made an awful mistake, Luna withdrew a parchment, lovingly bound in a little lavender bow.
Most are lost to time,
said Luna, looking at Izzy with those kind eyes, her lips two curled into an ever-tranquil smile.
But not all.
She sat down upon the stone table, joined by Tiberius.
Would you like to read it together?
Luna asked, beckoning her to join her at the table. What could Izzy do indeed if not smile in return and accept the letter? And so, side by side with little Tiberius perched atop Luna and her hooves holding the letter, she began to read aloud.
Dear Princess Luna.
Epilogue. Seasons passed. Bridalwood remained the same, the trees grew older still, the village quiet as ever. But Izzy Moonbow stood tall and proud, for she had friends to visit. Or she would be there right now if her thoughts weren't racing so much. For here in Luna's garden she paced back and forth, muttering all the way.
Okay, big day. Or night, I guess. I'm gonna head out there, and what am I gonna do? Do I just talk to them? Oh, there's so much to think about.
She exclaimed, scrunching her nose in thought, and she stopped, turning to look at Luna.
Do you think whoever wrote it is still around? I mean, they could have moved away and all. It's been a while. Oh, sweet child,
Luna said, shaking her head.
You'll do just fine. Greet them, say hello, and ask them to play with you. Anything, anything. You are Izzy Moonbow. You can do this.
She stood up to her full height. Izzy, tall as she was now, could only reach up to her chin, all in all.
Come,
said Luna, patting the space next to her.
I have a gift for you.
Izzy followed her lead, seating herself. Her eyes widened when she spied the item in Luna's hoof. Crystals and threads.
Is that a headband?
Luna finished.
Why yes. You ought to appear your best when you meet them, if you'd allow me.
When it was all done, her headband in place, her long mane was a little more tidy now, she could tell. Izzy hopped off the seat, looking back at Luna. As she always did, she kept up that elegant outlook even when those telltale bashful twitches came through her facade.
What do you think?
Luna said.
Your examples were rather useful. Well,
Izzy said, chuckling.
I don't have a mirror on me right now, so I guess I'll have to ask them first.
Luna let out a fond laugh.
That is true. Now, do you remember what you need to do? Follow Orion's horn towards where the wind blows.
Izzy recited.
Right? There's a bunch more like the scent carried by the wind, or the other constellations, but did I get that right? Lovely. You remembered my lessons. Well, duh.
Izzy replied.
You sure know a lot about nights. I remember every night,
answered Luna.
As I shall remember this one.
She gave Izzy a sly little wink, one that she returned in kind. In the 5 years that had gone by, neither of them had ever spoken much of the dream. Luna, Izzy had concluded, had no real desire nor reason to speak of it or the forgotten past again. But the smell of lavender had been stronger than it was before, for Luna had grown so much more of it in the moonlit garden. For Twilight Luna had said then nothing else. Izzy didn't mind much. Luna was her friend, and that was all Izzy needed to know.
Oh, I almost forgot,
said Izzy. Before Luna could reply, she rummaged through her satchel, presenting a woven straw hat.
A gardener can't do without a hat, right?
Wordlessly, Luna accepted it in her hoof. She placed it upon her head where it tilted slightly.
Oh, darn it.
Izzy bemoaned.
I forgot to fit it first. That is all right,
Luna assured, a hoof upon her shoulder.
'Tis a comfortable wear, and I thank you for it.
She tipped her new hat.
Remember, Izzy Moonbow,
Luna said with dramatic flourish.
Should you need aid, know that I will always watch over you.
She reached up to brush away a strand of Izzy's mane, smiling warmly.
But I believe you will have it well taken care of.
She paused, and her gaze turned a little more serious.
Izzy, do you remember how when we first met you asked about Stardust and what it was? Yeah,
said Izzy.
And you said that it was magic and that it was gone from this world. But it is not entirely,
said Luna.
Not to those who know where to look. For it still touches all ponies at least once in their lives, in that one crystalline moment of realization of who they are, the transition from childhood when their purpose becomes known to them.
Her eyes followed a certain trail meaningfully, and Izzy's gaze followed where Luna's led towards the little symbol of the blue button heart on her flank.
Go out there,
Luna whispered,
and make your mark.
Feeling her lips quiver a bit, Izzy had a little else to say but one.
Thanks, Luna, for everything.
Their last hug was the tightest. Nothing else was said, only quiet little glances. As she was about to push the vine curtain apart, Izzy looked back at the garden. There Luna stood, Tiberius upon her head, the two of them waving goodbye. Izzy waved back, and off she went on her way, down the tunnel where she traveled down for so long over the years out into the village. For a brief fleeting moment, Izzy thought to look back, to see if the tunnel was still there, to see the lingering stardust upon the forest floor and leaves. Perhaps she'd even spy those blue-green eyes again, looking out for her from between the trees. The moment passed, though the warmth remained as always. Izzy continued her walk past the quiet homes of her neighbors through the mists until she reached the edge of the tree line. She saw an open field with rolling green hills. Above, the stars went on, forever past the clouds. Izzy could just see it now. Her mother painting upon the easel a grassy sunlit field beneath clouds in the bright blue sky. And without another hesitation, with a letter close to her heart and torch at the ready, Izzy Moonbow departed Bridalwood beneath a starry night. This is beautiful and inspirational in all the right ways. You give stuff to the people who love Generation 4 and then you combine it with stuff from Generation 5, all together it's a beautiful blend. And just looking at Generations aside, everything. So well executed. This story definitely deserves more attention, so I'd imagine the author would appreciate it greatly if you were to just share this with others, because you can't pass up on this. Anyways, enough of my rambling, and let's get on to our Moonlit donators. Top donators are 630, J10Man, Only One Thing, Ceru, Orion, and IronSky. Darkside, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel Skies, Austin Rolan, Stu Hex, Sword Brother and Mordred, Omicron, Lyrae, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Ride Soul, Badass Waffle, Shadow Moon, Luigi88, and many more beautiful people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.